Shalom from Jerusalem. This is TV7's Israel at War update. And as we're set to deliberate the latest developments here in Israel, throughout the region and beyond, with chief focus on the Islamic Republic of Iran, with the latest visit by the International Atomic Energy Agency Director General Rafael Grossi visiting Tehran, as well as the Northern Front, namely the situation vis-a-vis Hezbollah in Lebanon, as well as Syria and much more. But before all that, let's first focus on how this war began. 405 days ago, on October 7th of last year, the Islamist Hamas and its terror affiliates in the Gaza Strip launched an onslaught on southern Israel, declaring war by perpetrating a massacre, murdering some 1,200 mostly civilians, wounding over 4,800 others, and kidnapping some 250 people, including elderly, men, women, children, and infants. 101 of them remain in Hamas captivity to date. The subsequent day, on October 8th of last year, Iran essentially joined the war when it greenlighted its proxy in Lebanon, Hezbollah, to launch cross-border attacks into Israel. Since then, Hezbollah has launched over 12,000 munitions towards Israeli territory, and not Hezbollah alone. Additional proxies, Iranian proxies that is, from Syria, Iraq, Yemen, as well as Iran proper, have all directed fire towards Israeli territory, and once again, the Iranians have yet again declared that they remain determined to launch a direct and decisive attack against the nation-state of the Jewish people. Let's now turn to our TV7 editor-at-large, Mr. Amir Oren. Amir, what can you update us on the latest? A government official initially says earlier this week that Iran will scale back its intention from attacking directly at Israel. Now we hear the RGC top commander, Hossein Salami, come out and say to the contrary, and not only him, also the commander-in-chief of the military, reinforcing the words of the RGC commander that they are determined to strike Israel directly.
Strong words, indeed. Weaker by at least for the time being, and maybe we should put Iran on mute and wait patiently for whatever happens, because it seems that the various officials in Tehran, be they government, regime, IRGC, whoever, are trying to fill the time by announcements and pronouncements. Israel, of course, is still bracing for such an attack and is also preparing its counterattack. And obviously, the major event has been Donald Trump's election. Everyone is waiting to see what sort of policy comes out of the incoming administration. And it doesn't seem prudent on the part of Iranians to do anything rash right now, especially after the 2-hour meeting between Joe Biden and Donald Trump in the White House. They went over various world crises. They didn't disclose what they talked about, except to say that Ukraine and the Middle East came up. But Trump may back up whatever Biden could do over the next 2 months. So the Iranians, who are usually quite suspicious of intrigues and conspiracies, would probably wait until the new administration is in power. Now, as for Israel itself, 6 Israeli infantry soldiers were killed in South Lebanon yesterday morning. It seems that the IDF has started to clear a new line of villages, northern, the one adjacent to the Israeli border, and there it found some remnants of Hezbollah waiting in ambush, which caused the tragic outcome. Additionally, the Israeli Air Force has pounded Hezbollah targets in the Dahya in South Beirut, the Hezbollah stronghold, hitting important targets. But there are mounting voices in the Israeli public asking Why is Israel still fighting and bleeding in South Lebanon, where on the diplomatic front it is trying to get an arrangement there anytime soon?
Indeed. Well, let's focus first on the meeting that was held between Trump and Biden. For that, I'd like to turn to Madrid, Spain, where we're joined by Dr. Rafael Bardaji, a former national security advisor of Spain and currently the CEO of Worldwide Strategy. It's great to see you, Rafael. I'd like to
My pleasure.
immediately ask you, particularly on this meeting. We did hear, following this meeting, the national security advisor of Biden, namely Jake Sullivan, speaking about the various aspects of the discussion, the necessity to have an orderly transition of power, and the pledge to help the Trump team with whatever is necessary to make that happen. And when asked about specifically what are the two top priorities that the Biden team will relay to the Trump team when assuming office or in the transition prior to assuming office, he did highlight that first and foremost, strategic power competition in the long run, speaking about the People's Republic of China, the various challenges that the United States faces, but at the same time, the more immediate challenge is the Islamic Republic of Iran and its various proxies in the Middle East, threatening both U.S. service members and interests, including, of course, U.S. allies and partners. What are we to take out of that immediate message and urgency to deal with this issue?
Well, I wouldn't put much weight on the talk between the former and the incoming, the president and the incoming president Trump. No? I think it's just a ceremonial meeting, and yes, there are issues to be discussed and to be presented, but we know basically that the Biden team and the Trump vision of the world is totally different. So even if the Trump accepted the narrative presented by Biden himself, I don't think that will have much length to or impact on what the policy of the Trump administration may be. Actually, I think Trump has. You see the names that has been announced at the nominations. Well, China obviously is a big issue. It's probably the most important strategic challenge, and for them. And then Ukraine and the Middle East, but probably with a different philosophy. I would say that, to me, the best we can wait and see from the Trump administration is not to interfere negatively in the dynamics at present in the Middle East. I don't think they are going to be there to solve any major problem, but at least they will have some kind of freedom of action for the regional players, including Israel, and that will be more than enough to change the dynamic and to create probably a new hope for the whole region.
Indeed. Of course, as you mentioned, there is a very stark contrast between the Biden team and the Trump team when we're talking about the understanding and clear-eyed perception of the foreign policy that needs to be engaged, be it in the Middle East or elsewhere. But let's talk 1 second about Iran, if I may continue with you, Dr. Bardaji. We see Director General of the IAEA, Rafael Mariano Grossi, visit Tehran. He's still there. Of course, yesterday he met with the foreign minister, Bagheri, as well as the head of the Iranian Atomic Energy Organization, Salami, during the course of which, on the one hand, you hear the IAEA Director General speak about still having hope to be able to resolve the issue and being able to do so with a clear mandate granted to him by the future administration in Washington. While at the other hand, you hear the Iranians saying, we are open to negotiations, clearly concerned by the picks that President Trump has provided for state, national security advisor, and DOD, all hawks against the Iranians. They did also note that they do not encourage the United States to conduct any military actions, of course, terrified that something like this would bring about the demise of the Ayatollah regime.
Well, Jonathan, I'm old enough and have been following Iranian nuclear program for too many years that I could summarize only in one verb the Iranian attitude towards the West, considering the nuclear project, which is cheating and cheating and cheating. So I don't pay any credibility of what they say. We have to focus on what they have been doing in the last 4 years, which is accelerating and getting closer to building a nuclear arsenal, not a nuclear bomb, a nuclear arsenal. So I wouldn't trust what they say sincerely on this issue particularly. I think the most pressing issue for Iran now is whether they are caught in this dilemma, which is they need to retaliate against Israel attack because they need to be credible in front of their proxies, from Hezbollah in Lebanon to the Houthis in Yemen. So they need to do something. But at the same time, with Biden as a lame duck and Trump coming into the administration in January 20th, they know, or they must know, that if they do something, Israel will feel much more free to act against the oil facilities or even the nuclear installations. So that's, I think, the dilemma that the leaders in Tehran had to ponder and had to solve somehow. No? But again, with Iran, nothing is logical according to our logic. It's not. They think in a different way. So everything is possible, and we need to be prepared for every contingency. I wouldn't rule out an attack against Israel again, even if the cost of such attack is incredibly high. But they sometimes must do what they must do, no, independently of the cost, no. So yeah, unfortunately, I think we need to be prepared for everything.
Indeed. As you mentioned, the cheaters of Tehran did continue to enrich uranium far beyond civic application, which of course shows, as Mr. Owen mentioned, you need to mute and see what they do. Well, we're seeing what they're doing, and they are inching forward towards nuclear weapon proliferation. But Mr. Owen, let's return to Lebanon. The Lebanese front, of course, is in a certain situation in which the military is seeking to enhance, not significantly, but at least partially, its ground operation alongside a deepening of aerial strikes, something that we saw IDF Chief of General Staff, Lieutenant General Herzi Halevi, mention during his visit to the IDF Northern Command, as well as the Defense Minister, who just visited there yesterday. And he highlighted something quite interesting that caught me by surprise, at least, and that is that a new objective for the war in Lebanon includes also the disarming of Hezbollah. Was he misspeaking there?
Well, he put in very simplistic terms what the philosophical goal of everyone outside of Lebanon has been for many years. If you go back to the 1989 Taif agreement, all the militias except Hezbollah had to be dismantled, at least arms-wise. And obviously the next objective would have been to take Hezbollah, which was singled out, and disarm it too. But this is an idealistic goal. It is not practical. It is not to be achieved anytime soon. And if that were to be the benchmark for what Israel can realistically achieve in this campaign, the campaign will go on almost forever, obviously for many months and perhaps years. So putting aside what Minister Katz said, which was not backed up by any new cabinet announcement regarding the goals, what Israel wants to do is to keep degrading the various assets which Hezbollah has, both in the southern district, south of the Litani, and in Beirut and elsewhere in Lebanon, so that the time comes for an arrangement, it will be much weaker than it has been on September the 17th, when this particular phase of the campaign began with the beepers being set off, and then Nasrallah and others being assassinated. But the Israeli generals are much more realistic and modest in their expectations from this campaign, because they want the residents to go back as soon as possible. And this will only be possible once there is a ceasefire.
More modest and realistic within the constraints of the mandate granted to them by the government in Jerusalem, which, of course, if that mandate were to increase or grow or expand, it will allow them to, of course, achieve much more significant successes, of course, at different types of price. But Dr. Bardahi, let's talk about Syria for a moment, since we had Israeli Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer travel to Moscow, meet with different people there. Then he from there traveled back to Israel, then again to the United States, where he met both with the Biden team, subsequently also with the Trump team. And much of the discussions were about the Lebanese theater, as well as the necessity to thwart Iran from continuing its belligerence, to include the transfer of munitions from Iran through Iraq, Syria, into Lebanon proper to reinforce Hezbollah, basically. What can you tell us about that, and how should Israel look at this from a strategic perspective?
Well, I think there is a major change in the last couple of years that is affecting Israel and Iran, no? Is the extreme dependence by Russia of Iranian military capabilities that has been transferred to continue the fight in Ukraine. Drones, artillery, personnel, training, the use of certain drones. So I think that capability, industrial capability, has an important impact on Russian policy vis-a-vis any issue in Iran, including the nuclear program, no? So I sincerely have many doubts that the Russians will change course because of a new dialogue open with the Israeli authorities. I think the objective necessity of Russia to keep the pressure and the military activity in Ukraine make it vital for them the link to Iran, no? And they will have in exchange to support Iran in many other policies and issues, no? But again, Israel has a superpower deployed in Syria, and they have to deal, as in the past, they were able to achieve this deconflicting mechanism for the aerial attacks against the transfer of weapons from Iran to Lebanon. And I understand that dialogue has to be kept open, but I'm quite skeptical about the ability for making any change in Russian policy. Secondly, I think it is important to understand that Iran is not going to change either their vision or their policy. The only thing which will remain the same is the interest of the regime to be in power. And that's the only existential threat the Western world, Israel, or anyone else could pose against the Tehran. And that can be incremental from depriving them the access to the markets in the energy field, or anything that we can think about it, no? But with the Trump administration coming into power, I'm sure that the energy policy of the United States will have a direct impact on the energy benefits that Iran is taking from selling the oil to the world and to China, and that will affect their own survivability. So everything has to be put into the equation. It's much more complex. Probably it's a kind of 3D chess game today than was a year ago, no?
Indeed, of course, the reinforcement of sanctions will be something that the Trump administration and the Trump team will work on vigorously. Just to remark, the two key, at least proclaimed, foreign policy objectives of the Islamic Republic of Iran, the first and foremost one, is to deepen its influence in neighborly countries as well as beyond that. And the second one, which is supposed to accommodate the first, is to basically remove the United States influence from the region. They dub it as the American hegemonism, something that, of course, needs to be kept in mind because the so-called American hegemonism is also the reason that they target Israel beyond their religious reasons, which is, of course, the tip of the spear in their perception of the United States dominance in the Middle East. But Mr. Olin, let's turn now to another theater. Once again, we're seeing an uptick of drones being launched out of Iraq in the direction of Israel, targeting or attempting to target, failing to do so, but still attempting to target various installations both in northern Israel as well as in the southern city of Eilat. What can you tell us about that, and what is being done in order to change this reality?
So Israel has to defend its territory 360 degrees. It doesn't matter whether a drone or a missile comes in from the south, from Yemen, from the east, from Iraq, or from the southwest, from Gaza, north, from Lebanon. The Air Force, which operates both the fighters and the air and missile defense units, has to intercept as many as possible and alert the citizens to whatever is coming. Now, there is a question of priorities regarding offensive operations. Of course, Israel could launch a major offensive against Iraqi targets. They are not well defended. They may be dispersed, but they are easy to find, to locate, and plan against. But there are Americans in Iraq, and even though the status of forces agreement is going to supplant the current relationship between Baghdad and Washington, nevertheless, it is still a sort of an American protectorate out of which pro-Iranian militias operate. So Israel is still doing its best to act against Hamas and Hezbollah. And you remember that for almost a year after the first Houthi attacks, Israel did not counterattack targets in Yemen. It was only after a drone struck Tel Aviv, killing one person, that the first Israeli attack at Hodeidah took place. So obviously, if the Iraqi front becomes more troublesome, Israel will move some assets against it. But for the time being, it is best to focus on Lebanon and Gaza.
Indeed. Dr. Bardahi, I'd like to hear your take on this, and also if you may expand into the Jordanian theater, since we're talking here about, obviously, Hashd al-Shaabi in Iraq, 67 militias, of which 46 are backed by the Islamic Republic of Iran in different forms, and then some of them are also deployed along the border with Jordan. We're seeing also the Liwa Fatimiyun and Liwa Zainibiyun in militias loyal to Ayatollah Ali Khamenei on the southern border of Syria, on the border with Jordan again. So there is a certain encirclement of Jordan from both the Iraqi and the Syrian borders, while at the same time inside Jordan proper, we're seeing various syndicates affiliated with the Muslim Brotherhood, the Ahwan, that are, of course, affiliated with the Islamist Hamas, also trying to destabilize the Hashemite kingdom and to smuggle weaponry into Israel, particularly to the northern Samaria regions. What is happening right now, and how can we deal with this issue?
Well, I think that's logical from the Iranian point of view. They are just trying to create more instability and chaos in the region. They have a clear target in Jordan. No? And I think we should avoid the mistake of that has been made by many in the Western world and some in Israel, to differentiate very clearly between the good Palestinians and Hamas, the good Lebanese and Hezbollah. I mean, Hezbollah is just Iran. It's an extension of Iran. The Houthis are not just a proxy. It's an Iranian armed system. And the militias in Iraq and in Syria is Iran. It's Iran presence, it's Iran strategy, it's Iran command, it's Iran direction. And unless we take this into consideration and we start acting according to that, we will be just fighting here, getting some tactical successes, but no strategic advance at all. And I think what Iran is doing is just playing his cards and is trying to shift the focus of instability from one place to another, trying to maintain the maximum power he has in the region and against the encirclement of Israel and against the presence of the United States in the Middle East. So just in a piecemeal fashion, we are just gaining tactical advantages. But again, let me put it almost, I'm sorry, in a kind of comic way, but it will be an irony that will be able, and Israel is able to secure the life of the people in the northern part of Israel, bringing them back to their home, and then Hezbollah is fighting against Tel Aviv in the middle of and the center of Israel. So we need to put this in a comprehensive package and see how can we really change the whole axis of resistance into a new axis of losers. And that's why we need to focus on the victory in not just one single theater, but in the whole Iranian presence in the Middle East.
Jonathan,
Absolutely.
may I have one remark regarding what Rafael just
You
said?
have 5 seconds for that. Go ahead.
Well, strategically, of course, his analysis is correct. But domestically, politically, it makes all the difference for the Iranians if they are having casualties of their own or if they are only looking from the outside at their proxies being held.
Indeed, I also completely agree with that. But with that, I'd like to immediately thank Dr. Bardahi and Mr. Oren for all of your insights. Much food for thought, of course. I'd like to thank all of you at home as well, and also take this opportunity to highlight that TV7 Israel is a nonprofit, and therefore, if you're blessed by our productions, which are 100% exclusively donation-based, and would like to support our programs and operations here in Jerusalem, please do so. You can donate via our website at www.tv7israelnews.com. So with that, from here in Jerusalem, wishing you a good day and shalom.